hey, I didn't expect much after that bottled blonde palette, I'll tell you. Well, hey everybody, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of Drag Race Holland Season 2, Episode 4. And I just want to give a little shout out to Trixie Mattel Cosmetics because, well, I went out and got the Plant Gay palette, and that's what I'm wearing on my face. And I treated myself to a mirror. I needed a new one. I was wearing my beloved Beast mirror out, and unfortunately, a lot of the stones are coming off of it, so I just thought, you know, better to appreciate it, remember the good times, and I just thought, I'm at the Trixie website, I might as well get a mirror. This is a fabulous mirror, by the way. It's a good size, good weight. I like it. I also was using, of course, the Trixie Mattel Summer of Love blush palette, but I'm running out of the highlighter. I don't know if you can see, but I've reached pan on it. It's one of the few items that I have that I use so much that I'm actually using it all. So I just want to congratulate Trixie Mattel on a fabulous new palette, a great makeup line that is so popular, it's never in stock. But I'm on the waiting list for that once it comes back in. Otherwise, you won't know if I'm embarrassed. All right. Seriously. But before we get started, I just want to welcome my latest Patreon, Nathaniel Fuller, to the Fingerdoo family. Thank you so much for your support and love, Nathaniel. For those of you who don't know, over on my Patreon page, we do 2 live chats a month. Plus, of course, we have my weekly watch it. If you'd like to join, the link for that is down below in the description box. Also down in the description box is my link to my tipper dues and my Redbubble merch store, where you can get all sorts of lovely Wilma images on t-shirts. You can also help support the Rainbow Railroad. And I just want to announce that Redbubble has hats now. You can get Wilma images on hats. I always go for black. I don't know why, because I sweat so bad I end up with salt stains all over the hat. But they come in white, blue, all colors. All the colors. And you can get them either a dad cap, which is the buckle, or a baseball cap, which is the snappy little plastic tabby doodah. And that's all on my Redbubble page, and that link is down below too. And while you're down there, why not hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now, Jorge, drink me. Oh, look at this, a nice tall pint glass of Coke Zero, and what is that? Peach schnapps. Okay. All right, now let's get to it. So, we kick this episode off with the Queens bidding Massissy a fond farewell. It was obvious that she would be missed, but clearly no one was sorry to see her go. I mean, it is a competition after all. Even though it was her second time cleaning that mirror, Ivy said that she was sorry to send another queen home. But did she? I mean, yes, she's won 2 lip syncs for your life, but in my opinion, she's still very far from being an assassin. I mean, she won against Massissy, who had more or less given up, and beat out Reggie by the skin of her teeth. If I were Ivy, I'd be more worried about staying out of the bottom than sending queens home. Seriously. As the queens relaxed, Tabitha took off her headpiece, and I have to say, I liked her look way more without it. So did the other queens, but only because she reminded them all of Uncle Fester from the Addams Family. Maybe it was because their numbers were starting to dwindle, but Tabitha took a moment to congratulate everyone for making it to episode 4 and how proud she is of the sisterhood they've become. Well, all except the Countess. The next day in the workroom, the queens congratulated Vivaldi on her first win, and Kata, who was now a very proud frontrunner, with 2 badges prominently displayed. But the gloating didn't last very long, as the pre-recorded Ru message called the queens to attention. This week's message was full of fairy tale references that had all the queens excited. I mean, seriously, who doesn't love a fairy tale? Or hey, put that away. When Fred arrived, he got a little pre-choreographed greeting from the queens, and then it was time for the mini challenge. The queens were going to read each other because the library was open, and reading is what? Fundamental. That's right. And because Fred is too nice to get on the bitch wagon, and yes, that was my drag queen name in high school, he brought along a mean, old, grizzled hag from the Dutch drag scene to do it for him. Dusty Gersanovich, the bingo queen of the Zijik. She got everyone in the mood right away by tearing all the queens a new one. It was vivid. Up first was Vanessa Van Cartier. She did okay, but her best burn was telling the Countess it was too bad her sugar daddies couldn't buy her any talent. Either way, Dusty was not impressed. Kato was next, and she went in deep. She got Tabitha, Mr. Potato Head, and compared her to an Egyptian goddess with the face of a dog and the body that has been compounding for years. Of course, Tabitha took no time to correct Kato by pointing out that she meant decomposing. The classic reverse read. Here's to Tabitha. As for Puni, Kato put her personal experience as her ex into play by saying Puni's so wide that when Kato tossed her salad, she could taste her ulcer. Dusty seemed impressed by that. I was trying not to throw up on myself. Speaking of salads, Puni was next, and she took no prisoners. Dusty and Fred were speechless. It's too bad that the Countess had to follow Puni because, well, she sucked, and not in a good way. Ivy was next, and, well, she seemed to get one good dig in on Tabitha, which Dusty and Fred seemed to like. Yeah. Tabitha called Vivaldi an unfinished symphony, which Dusty thought sounded more like a compliment than a read. Vivaldi had a few good digs for Keta and Tabitha's neck, but her dig at the Countess not counting on another win only seemed to get her the threat of a sexless evening. Well, that could be any evening where the Countess is concerned. Don't mess her hair is what I'm trying to say. So, when the library was closed, Dusty announced that the winner of the mini-challenge was My Little Puni. And with a fond farewell to Dusty, it was then on to the maxi-challenge, Cinderella, the Rusical. The queens were excited, and because she won the mini, Puni got to assign the roles. Right away, the queens all grabbed the script and started reading. This Rusical seemed to have all the elements of all the fairy tales rolled up into a Cinderella bow, like Into the Woods, Drag Race style. Puni wasted no time getting down to casting. Some of the queens expressed interest in roles, like Vanessa, who wanted to be Cinderella, but both Ivy and the Countess wanted to be Little Red Riding Hood, so Puni held an audition. She also made Tabitha and Vivaldi audition for the role of Mama, even though Vivaldi had requested the DJ Prince / Fairy role. I thought it meant DJ Prince Fairy, but no, it's two roles. When the auditions were over, Puni announced that the Countess would play Sleeping Beauty, Vivaldi would play Snow White, Ivy would be playing Gerda, the mermaid, which meant she'd be in a wheelchair, and, well, that worried Ivy because she wanted to show off all her skills. And apparently, dancing is one of them. Vanessa got cast as Cinderella, which was just fine with her. Tabitha was another queen who was happy with her casting, as she'd be playing Mama. As for the dual role of the fairy and the DJ Prince, Puni cast herself. I have to say, I was impressed by her taking on such a big role because often these are the roles that end up backfiring. Fingerdoo's cross for Puni that that's not true. And finally, Kato was cast as Red Riding Hood. Some of the queens were happy, some were sad, but there wasn't any time for a pity party because it was off to choreography with the delicious Gerard Van Vint and his equally tasty, but in a full head of hair kind of way, assistant, Damien. Apparently, Tabitha had worked with Gerard before and knew he wasn't going to make this Rusical easy. And she was right. The first thing Gerard said to the queens was, "There's little time, and together we have to deliver a beautiful show," which is the nicest way I've ever heard anyone say, "Screw this up and I'll haunt your dreams! Your dreams!" First up were the stepsisters, Sleeping Beauty, aka the Countess, Vivaldi as Snow White, and Ivy as the Little Mermaid. More like a little budgerigard the way Ivy kept chirping on about her little part and what she couldn't do with it. Wait, that doesn't sound right. I don't know. If I were Ivy, I'd be focusing on making the most of what I'd been given. Have we already forgotten Shea Coulee's scene steal from Kardashians the Rusical? Try harder, Ivy. You've been in the bottom twice and we're only on episode 4. Seriously. Vivaldi seemed worried about sharing the stage with two other queens, which surprised me because it was just the Countess and Ivy. Vanessa was living her best life. Her work as a cleaner herself put her in touch with her inner Cinderella, which she found encouraging. Kate, on the other hand, was put through the paces with Gerard, so much so that she was starting to doubt herself. Well, her legs were spread wide open. I doubt myself, too. It's a vulnerable position to be in. Then it was elimination day. All the queens were sore from the rehearsals, but that didn't stop Vanessa from asking the Countess if her threat of no sex where Vivaldi's reed was concerned stayed intact. From what both of the queens said, it sounds like there's nothing going on with them. The other queens didn't buy it. I don't care. As Ivy shaped Kata's eyebrows, why she couldn't do it herself, I have no idea. The other queens got ready. Vanessa shared with a very heavily made-up Countess. I'm kidding. The Countess was literally wearing eyeliner and lipstick. I hate her. Anyway, Vanessa told the Countess that after she'd finished her transition, she lost all of her gigs as a performer. No one would hire her, and it got so bad that she considered suicide. To say it got emotional is an understatement. The Countess couldn't conceive of being denied a place in the community you loved, never mind work. But being the fighter that she is, Vanessa was able to get work as a cleaner and got her life back on track. And now, as the Countess pointed out, she's playing Cinderella on Drag Race. More importantly, Vanessa is also the current reigning Miss Continental and Miss Continental Europe. Suck on that, haters. Never give up. Never surrender. Seriously. And then it was time for the runway. Tell me I'm lying when I say that Fred was serving all kinds of Linda Evangelista realness in that wig and fun fur. Linda Evangelista's from Canada, you know. Joining Fred at the judges' table this week was season 1 favorite Raven van Dorst, star of the upcoming musical about Princess Diana, Freek Bartels, and returning once again, the lovely and divine Marieke Samalo. Up first, Cinderella, the Rusical. This was a lot to watch for me. Basically, it was the story of a dysfunctional family going to a ball. One of them gets waylaid in the woods, gets high with a wolf girl, wins the dance competition at the prince's party, runs off leaving a shoe. The next day, the prince shows up to find the girl that fits the shoe. When she finds the girl that fits the shoe, she doesn't want anything to do with the prince. She just wants to go and get high all the time. It was an inspirational story. The one true standout of this Rusical for me was Tabitha. I thought her performance as the step monster was fabulous. Vanessa did well as Cinderella, although the part itself was boring, and I'm not sure why Vanessa chose such a basic wig for her fairy makeover. There should never be anything basic about a fairy makeover, because that was my drag queen name in high school. Puni did a great job playing two characters, although having them same makeup for both parts was a little distracting for me. And Kata as Little Red Riding Hood was good too. Not that the rest were bad. I like Vivaldi's Snow White makeup, but Ivy and the Countess did well enough to be, well, easily forgettable. And then it was time for the runway. Category is Statements on the Runway. First up, Tabitha in a gorgeous dress that was covered in body-shaming lingo. I loved everything about this look, including the hair and the surprisingly low back. It was a big, fat XXL Fingerdoo for Tabitha. And I mean that in the best way possible. Seriously. Ivy-Elyse Monroe was next, and her runway was about stopping Asian hate. I didn't get this runway. Don't get me wrong. I understood the imagery of the COVID virus-themed jacket after she explained what it was, but before that, all I saw was crabs. And what's so bad about that? At least you can get rid of crabs. Once Ivy ditched that jacket, what was her runway saying? That she's not afraid to wear white? I know she said it represented a strong, independent Asian woman, but it was fairly generic. Well, until she whipped out that little red fan. I will say this, it's the best her makeup's been all season. Still, I gave Ivy a finger don't. My Little Pony's ode to addiction was interesting, but I didn't really see what it had to do with anything. Sure, the green collar emulated the smashing of liquor bottles, but without the explanation, I had to give Pony a finger don't too. I didn't want to. I felt the same with the Countess's runway regarding breaking boundaries. It was too literal with her, like, breaking through those window bars off the top. But then, What were we looking at? A stunningly beautiful dress, yes, but what did it have to say about the boundaries she'd broken? I will admit, she was giving me butterfly goddess vibes, which could be seen as breaking free of boundaries, but I gave her a finger don't as well. Seriously. Vivaldi's runway was breathtaking. I couldn't get enough of it, but there was nothing about deforestation in it, if I'm being honest. If the dress had been green and the red more orange, then I would have seen it, but this look for me put me in mind of Vanessa's Vampire Queen look from last week, so she got a finger don't as well. Seriously. Kata's ode to mental illness was hauntingly beautiful. The stylized straitjacket, the white eyelashes, the nude boots. I loved it all and had no trouble getting her message. And then the straitjacket transformed into that gorgeous dress. I gagged. This was an easy Fingerdoo for me, which was also my drag queen name in high school. I'm not proud. Last but not least was Vanessa Van Cartier in her ode to trans pride. It started off with a black hoodie covered in hate to her revealing a stunning gown in the trans pride colors. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. Up first, the Countess. Her runway look was inspired by being bullied for not fitting in as a youngster, but Mareke thought that the minute she threw away the window bars, she was just a posh, privileged woman from Saint-Tropez. As for her performance in the Rusical, Frank thought she didn't do enough to stand out. Pooney's emotional explanation about her father and his struggles with addiction being the inspiration of her runway was touching, and Fred just loved the look, while Frank was very impressed with how well she played the two roles. Here's to Pooney! I won't do a cheers out of respect. Bless. Ivy's runway inspiration was understandable. It's awful how we talk about equality and stopping hate, and yet the Asian community seems to get excluded from the concept all the time. But Mareke hit the nail on the head when she said that the jacket looked more like crab legs than the coronavirus. And Frank felt she missed some opportunities where being in a wheelchair as a mermaid were concerned. I agree. I'm still not sure if Keta's mental illness runway was inspired by a personal issue or a friend or family member's struggle, but Raven just loved it. She also loved how Keta chose to be Little Red and the Wolf all at once. Frank thought Keta should release Grab the Basket as a single. So I'm guessing he liked it. Or maybe it was just the basket. I don't know, we're not close. Vivaldi was next, and as beautiful as her costume was, Mareke thought it was ironic that she chose to say stop deforestation by wearing plastic. I have to admit, that made me laugh too. Here's to Mareke. She's not stupid. Raven van Dorsch was right when she said picking a global issue over a personal one may have been too big an ask for Vivaldi. Speaking of big, Raven was also distracted by Vivaldi's bodacious tatas during the acting challenge. Well, who wasn't? Vanessa's runway message was very clear, and even though Fred complimented her on the beauty of it all, she said it's becoming expected and would like to see Vanessa change it up a little. Frank loved her performance as Cinderella, but warned her about getting lost in a role that isn't as funny or as big as the others. Now a warning? Finally, it was Tabitha's turn. Why she was last to be judged when she was first down the runway is a mystery to me, but this critique was worth the wait. Her runway message was very clear and obvious, and Freak thought that it stood out from everyone else's as a true statement piece. Tabitha took a moment to let the judges know that the other queens had all helped her by lending her things for the look. Here's to the other queens, seriously. Raven was beyond impressed by Tabitha's performance in the Rusical and thought she could have carried the whole shebang on her own. Clearly, this was a good week to be Tabitha, I'm so serious. And then with that, the queens retired to the Untucked Lounge. Once there, they congratulated themselves and praised Pooney for sharing such a personal story. The Countess was feeling great and gorgeous, even though she got a lukewarm review from the judges. The same cannot be said for Ivy and Vivaldi. Both felt they did their best, even though the judges thought they could do more. Ivy thought doing more meant being bigger when she was performing, and that's why she failed. Again, it's not about being physically bigger, it's about using what's around you. She was in a wheelchair and did nothing with it. Have we learned nothing from Bette Midler's Dolores Delago? Seriously. As for Vivaldi, I thought that breastplate was a miss for Snow White because she was clearly upstaged by it. Who wouldn't be? It was huge. Surprised you could see over it. Back on the main stage, it was announced that My Little Pony was this week's winner and the latest recipient of a Feather Up the Butt badge. Here's to Pony! As for the bottom two queens, I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that it was the Countess and Ivy. As far as this lip sync was concerned, the Countess looked lost through the whole thing, which is probably why she spent so much time walking around. But she did work the hell out of that beautiful dress. Ivy, on the other hand, really seemed to embody the song and sold it for me on an emotional level, but I got real tired of her whipping that wig back and forth. She needed to change it up a bit, if you ask me. Her kicking off her heels was a no too, and I felt she got frantic during the guitar solo, but at least she was giving us something. All the Countess was doing was serving Stepford wife. Seriously. So, once all the minds were free, I was a bit surprised that Fred told the Countess to chante, but not before he warned her to be more than beautiful if she wants to continue in this competition. As for Ivy, even though I thought she did better than the Countess, it was her third time in the bottom, so it was obviously her time to go. So, what do you think? Did the right queen go home? Should Ivy have stayed over the Countess's pretty prancing? Is the Countess on a slippery slope of beauty and poise? Leave your comments down below, and while you're down there, if you'd like to support this channel with a tip or do, or buying some merch off Redbubble, or joining the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, those links are all in the description box down below. But the best way you can support this channel is to give me a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel, if you already haven't. And until next week, miss me! Mwah! Seriously, Jorge. There's a lot this week, I'll tell you what. I don't know if there was something lost in the translation where that Rusical was concerned, but I don't know, it surprised me, all of the drug referencing. Only because Drag Race has a very young fan base. I mean, I don't have a problem with the drug references myself, but it makes me uncomfortable, some of the language they use on Drag Race and some of the references like sex and drugs where, you know, some of their viewers are so young. How many kids' parents are sitting with their kids watching these shows and explaining stuff to them or letting them know that real adults that work in the real world don't actually get anywhere by talking like that to people? Not that drag queens aren't real. They're real. I've seen them.